Welcome to the podcast. Get focused. Today we're going to talk about successful mergers and acquisitions. For those of you who've been paying attention, you see that our industry is now in an unprecedented era of consolidation. In some cases, valuations are off the charts, topping 15 times EBITDA. Needless to say, the consolidation has been happening fast and furious over the past 5 years. But the question we're asking is, how do you pay that much and extract the kind of future value you're looking for? Well, today's guest has a wealth of experience as an inside practitioner and leader during significant acquisition and significant organizational change. So let me introduce him to you now. Michael Pratt, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having me, Keith.
So I've known Mike for quite a while now. Not only has Mike been a good friend to the firm, to me, but he's also been a client of ours as well. Let me give you a little bit of Mike's background. He's a global human capital and talent executive with over 25 years of leadership experience across investment management and financial services. He's recognized for advising CEOs and senior executives on enterprise-wide talent strategies. So what does that mean? That means things like leadership development, succession planning, cultural transformation, and oh, by the way, acquisitions and mergers. As a matter of fact, all of Mike's experience really fit well into how do we extract value and make sure we're getting the value we're paying for when we acquire another firm. Most recently, Mike was serving as Senior Vice President and Head of Talent and Leadership Development at Voya Financial, where he was really in charge of the firm's human capital strategy across leadership development, executive succession, coaching, and enterprise talent process. Prior to that, Mike was a managing director and head of human resources at Voya Investment Management, where he shaped the people strategy for a $360 billion global investment manager. Now, I know Mike worked closely with the CEOs there and executive team. He was a member of the executive team to transform culture and lead multiple M&A integrations. All of this included the things that Mike will talk about in terms of compensation, sustainable leadership, and how do you leverage your talent. So Mike also serves on multiple academic and nonprofit boards. As you can tell from this introduction, Mike is a very busy person. All focused on aligning people strategy with business strategy. So we're blessed to have Michael join us here today. I'm thrilled to be able to have you hear what Mike has to say about M&A work because this is such an important topic in our industry today. So again, Mike, welcome. And let's just go ahead and just jump right in.
Sure. Thanks for having me again. I'm excited for this morning.
Glad you're here. Mike, in your experience, what are three things that increase the probability of success in a merger or acquisition?
So, Keith, when I think about the different M&A transactions we did, and we did a variety from 2020 to 2022, probably 6 in total, from team lift outs to large scale, 200 plus people, 100 billion AUM deal to integrate teams within Voya at the time. The things I think of were, number one, communication. During that time of change, not only for our own employees, but for the employees that we're joining, how are we communicating to them, the frequency of the communication? How are we making sure what we say and what we do align very closely? I think that's a tool Focus has brought to us a long time ago. What's your say-do gap? How closely can you minimize the gap between what you say and your team say to what you actually do? And if there's a gap, call it out and figure out how to fix it. So I'd say communication, number one. Recognize and appreciate the teams that are going through this, both our team and the team that is joining the firm. You got to emphasize some empathy and humility, right? People are going through change. It's their lives. Some people will grow and have broader roles. Some roles will be embedded. Some roles will be eliminated. Some roles will be changed. Like there's a variety of things happening. And so as leaders during this time of change, and as you're the advisor, if you're the CHRO to the CEO of what's going on, recognize our greatest asset in asset management is people, and they're going through dramatic change. So recognize some empathy and humility at that moment. And the other piece I would say is listening and learning, right? So communication, empathy, humility, and listening and learning. And so recognize you don't have all the answers as you're going through very small team lift outs or very large team integrations. And how do we take the opportunity to listen to what those new employees are potentially saying to us, what they understand about our culture, what they don't understand about our culture, um, and listen to it and then learn from it. And then that ties back into communication. If we see a gap, how do we get out there and communicate frequently about maybe there's a misalignment of a view or a value, or miscommunication? We ran into a lot of rumor mill during some of these things, which, that's, exciting for people to jump on the rumor mill.
Yeah.
It's hard to reel it back in, and get people focused on, officer title criteria or mapping roles into the organization, or other things. So those would
Yeah.
be my three that come to mind, and they can change, you know, um, from deal to deal in terms of like how complex or small the deal is. But those are the three that kind of jumped off when you asked the question.
Yeah. I want to cycle back to something you said a moment ago, which is, the talent. It is the most valuable asset in the work that we do, in asset management and wealth management. We're not making widgets. It's all about people. It's all about we're making decisions and how do we make sure we get the best out of that. In my experience, when M&A goes wrong, it's because we haven't focused on the talent. We focused on all the other things like the numbers and the products, not recognizing that all of that is an output of the talent. So, Mike, let's talk about one in particular, one of those three things in particular that you applied. Give us an example of how you approached it, because I think leaders really want to hear, well, that's great, Mike, but does it really actually work? So, talk for a moment, if you would,
Yeah.
about one of the things that you did that really helped pull something together to extract the value.
Doing these deals, which are all very exciting. Everyone wants to do deals, but you have to be in a position to do them,
Right,
and you have to listen to what those teams are saying. Some of those teams are saying, we're a small boutique organization. We need the help. Like, we're doing everything. We're doing compliance. We're doing legal. We're doing investments. We're doing client service. But their specialty, their genius is in investments. So how do we free up their capacity and those other things? And I remember doing one deal where we met in obviously our office in New York, and we brought in the team that would support this organization that was joining us. So that person wakes up every day thinking about marketing for your product. That
right.
person wakes up every day thinking about technology solutions to support you. That's your compliance person. And so when you do these deals, you have to understand what is the motivation of some of these teams to join, and how do you bring that to life? So a lot of that, I'm doing a lot of talking. A lot of that is a lot of listening, right? Two ears, one mouth. They're in that proportion for a reason. So listen more, to the teams that are joining you, and then you can understand a little bit more in terms of how you can emphasize some of the things that are great about your firm, or be transparent and say, hey, we're working on this,
Yeah,
to how to improve. And to your
yeah,
point, that's the piece on culture, right? They're leaving someplace to join you. If it's a team lift out, if it's a merger or an acquisition, there's an uncertainty moment, and you have to connect with people and understand looking for, um, at the firm they're joining.
yeah. I know when we worked with you all on one in particular, there were two things that were really important. One is, and you mentioned this, how do we get the most value by putting people in the best position to win, which is their genius. So I'm here to invest. I'm not here to do compliance. I'm not here to do, client service. I'm here to invest. So I want to make sure that we understand what their genius is. And so we work together on that. And let's make sure we give them the opportunity to work in their genius 80% of the time, which is a tall order in this industry. Most people work in their genius less than 50% of the time. And that's from data that we've researched. The other thing that you guys did, which I really thought was quite clever, was you took our competitive edge survey and you did a pre and a post. And the pre acquisition was, what are we buying? Is this a good marriage? Are we putting together two organizations that have similar value systems? Because that's usually what blows it up. The marriage fails because we have different values. And then you did a post, which is, so how did we do? And what I thought was interesting about that approach, Mike, was that you were able to look statistically at the values and the communication style of leadership and things that really mattered to the people statistically and compare those before you did the actual merger and then afterward, a year or so later, how we doing? And that's really what shows you whether or not the thing is going to knit together or not.
Yeah,
Right.
and I think that goes into the bucket of listening and learning, right? When we did the in 2022, we did a very sizable deal All right, 100 billion of assets under management came over. I think we retained 95% of the investment teams. It was during the Great Resignation. We had 10 weeks to do it for regulatory issues. It was like the perfect storm, and we're all virtual, right? No one's
Hmm.
in offices, right? Um, so that was very complex, and what we found we needed help with, and we identified it quickly. We were communicating constantly. We would communicate dates. We would communicate. We were going to communicate, and we would do this constantly. We could have done more. We realized that, but one of the pieces we had to get past the rumor mill, and the rumor mill was flying in the face of our communication, and so we couldn't just rely on hearing information come through. And that's where I first reached out to you and said, "Hey, we're in a tight time frame here. I need a survey that will help me understand not only what our employees are thinking about the deal, but what the target employees that are joining us." It was 200 plus employees who were joining us, right? And so we needed to do that in a very quick time frame. It couldn't be a multifaceted, very management consulting, huge deck, data.
Right.
Like, I needed something. And then, Keith, which was one of the things I loved about what you guys were able to help us with, we need to bring this back to our leadership team in a very short order and talk to them about it. And we had that offsite. I think we're in Florida. Shortly thereafter, you joined, and we went through and said, this is what we saw coming into the deal. This is where we pivoted based on some of the feedback we got. This is where our values were very close. This is where we were a little off. We think some of that was miscommunication. We don't know, but we're going to do a post-mortem after we get these teams embedded, because our deal, we had to get the investors over first.
Yeah.
Then we had to get the infrastructure teams over, and we had to get everybody done, the technology teams and stuff, by like 3 to 4 months later. So it was very complex, and it was a high sense of urgency, high sense of pace. And the other thing I would say is empower your teams. As the head of HR, you have a very talented team that you work very closely with. I had a very high trusting team, and we tried to play our positions. We didn't try to play other people's positions. We can have opinions on other people's
Right.
positions,
Right.
but you know, perfection was the enemy of progress for a 10-week deal. And people were working 24 hours a day. I mean, literally, like, handing off in the middle of the night. I just got to get 2 hours of sleep. Someone jump back on and get in the shared document and work through this. And it was a global integration. So we were dealing with Europe, and it was a lot of fun. You look back on it and say it was fun. During the moments, it probably wasn't as fun, but
Right.
you figured it out.
Well, it's so interesting because often we'll see deals in the marketplace where the window of opportunity is very limited. And you mentioned rumors in the rumor mill. And we know that rumors can actually take a deal down because human beings are wired for stories, right? That's how you preserve culture, through storytelling. What's one of the craziest rumors that you came across in your experience working with a merger? And then how did you advise leaders to manage it?
Yeah, I think some of them, we had a lot of these Q&A sessions and communications going out, that we'd have these open mic moments every other week or every week, where we could get Q&A, and we kept getting the same rumor, like, they're going to get rid of everybody, they don't want us, like, all this stuff. And this is a pretty sizable deal, and it kept coming up, and we figured out kind of like the direction it was coming from, and it was from a leader that was not coming over,
Mm,
and just trying to get to the root of it. And we played the positive side of it versus, like, the rumor mill is this: if we called out a rumor, we made sure that people knew it wasn't a fact. And by the way, nothing went perfect throughout this whole deal, but it happened. It got executed on. When we made mistakes, we called it out. My team's made mistakes, right? Hey, we made a mistake. I'm on the leadership call for the week. We made a mistake this week. This is what happened. This is how we're correcting it. This is how we're getting in front of it. And you heard other teams say, listen, we're making decisions with limited information, and we have a very short time frame to do these things. We're going to make some mistakes. Let's just fix them. As it's like changing a tire on a car while it's going. Like, let's fix it along the way.
right.
We can, if we had 8 months, this would be perfect. We don't. We have 10 weeks. So I think that was some of it. The rumor mill called out, knock it down, take the positive side of things, really try to emphasize and get your leaders out there, right? I think you always talk about, like, CEO, client, employee, other. Like, what is the proportion our CEO was in talking to clients, right? That's the number one thing. They're out there talking about the clients, about the deal, how it's going to. Employees, get out there in front of the employees, get your leadership team out in front of the employees, both the new joining employees and your existing employees.
Yeah.
So what is the message each leader could take from the CEO and say, okay, Mike, get out there and talk to the HR team. CFO, get out there and talk to the finance team. Operations, get out. Let's get some consistent messaging going down there, and let's really start to over communicate, not just on email, not just on Mike's communications once a week,
Hmm.
but as active leaders, get out there and bring stuff back as you're hearing things. And as a leadership team, we were meeting multiple times a week, raising things up and trying to knock them down. And we had a very high trusting leadership team
Yeah.
at that time, so which was great.
So you mentioned employees, obviously critical when you're when you're doing an acquisition, you are buying talent. Um, Stay bonuses are very common, but there are other strategies to solidify the talent base that you want to keep and keep them in place. What are a couple other strategies that you would recommend or that you would advise leaders to use to keep the talent that you want in the chairs?
Yeah, and so Keely, you bring up a good point. Money's easy, right? Stay bonus easy. We were in the Great Resignation during this big deal.
Right.
People were getting upside potential of 30, 40% in new opportunities and getting all their stuff from the firm we were acquiring because that's just the way things were, right? So we had to go on much more of a, I don't want to call it a sales approach, but really talk about culture as a competitive advantage. Talk about, how we had multiple, we had since I was at Voya, we did 2 CEO successions. Those were from those were people built from the organization. I was an internal promotion. I think when we looked at our executive team, at one point, I think it was like 90% were internally promoted, 80%, some really. So we were in the position to talk about talent and talk about career development and talk about a good culture.
Hmm.
But we worked on it for so long before that, right? You don't work on a CEO succession the day the CEO says, I'm going to retire or I'm going to go someplace else. You work on it for 7 years before to create a path for that individual to grow in responsibilities and roles. And at that moment, it's not saying a no-brainer, but your clients turn around and look at it. Of course, that's, or the mutual fund board, when you meet with them, they turn around and look at it and say, of course, that was the answer to the question because you've had that person in front of us for the last 5 years talking about these things.
Yeah.
And so I think stay bonuses are the easy thing. People like them. So, and they're a very good tool. But I think in that moment, what we ran through was we had to talk more about culture. We had to get out there and be in front of the teams we were inquiring. So make them feel like they're part of something and really embrace the people that are joining the organization. Make them feel like it was a recruiting event. Right? Talent has to be thought of with the big T and how that all comes together and is all integrated. And if you're developing talent management programs and development opportunities, and you're identifying key attributes of what makes someone successful at focus consulting, then you should be recruiting for those attributes too in your leaders. And you should be
Yeah.
looking for values that align with the organization. And so it all has to be connected and integrated. And in those moments of those deals, that was very helpful for us because
Yeah.
we could rely on, hey, this is our officer promotion criteria. No, you're not getting promoted joining the firm. It's a mapping exercise, but we will promote people 6 months later as part of our process. And when you did that to some of these titles that people were disappointed they didn't map to this title because we said this is not a promotion moment. This is a mapping moment to get everybody into the organization. It was the fall of 22, I think. It's a mapping moment, but we will go through a promotion process and we will promote people just like all of our employees. And when we did it, we went back and sent the big email out to the firm.
Yep.
Here's who was promoted. And the say-do gap was so thin because you saw names of people you acquired from the firm getting promoted. And that took time to show, right? So in your puzzle pieces you were putting together, you knew it was going to happen. Your team knew it
Right.
was going to happen, not by exact person, but you knew what we were committing to. But your proof point was 7 months later.
See, now that's important. Let's talk about the say-do gap for a moment, because I think that beyond the stay bonus, um, making and keeping clear agreements, something that we teach, something that Voya is very, that is part of the DNA there. But you guys showed up with, well, look at what happens when you come here. And there are three things I took away from what you just said. One, your job as a leader is to recruit all the time. You should always be recruiting people that you're acquiring to stay with the organization. That is a recruiting task. Then it becomes, well, why would I want to stay? Well, look at how we actually do succession. It's succession from the inside. We don't go to the outside. So now you're a part of that succession pool. There's great opportunity for you. And the proof statement is 6 months later, as you said, people got promoted. because you were able to live into that agreement. The third thing I think that was important, Mike, in what you said was you could look at statistically the comparison. I remember that time in Florida, we looked statistically at the comparison of the two organizations and said, why would you go anywhere else? This is a great marriage. Our values are aligned. You're joining an organization that's very similar to the one that you're currently in, which you love ostensibly because that's why you're there. But you could use facts as a
Yeah.
recruiting tool to get people to stay in their chairs, other than just things like stay bonuses, which come and go. And as you and I both know, that in acquisitions that don't work well, as soon as that clock runs out on the stay bonus, they tend to leave. And so you spend all
Yeah.
this money, and then at the end of 2 years or 3 years or whatever it is, they go somewhere else. So what I really like about what you said is the proof is in the facts that you're showing and the behavior that you're showing to say, see, we were telling you the truth about opportunities at your new organization.
Yeah. And I think, Keith, one of the things I love about facts versus stories, you need stories, right? But one of the things we developed a long time ago was a human capital dashboard that looked like an investment dashboard, right? So I could measure attrition trends, not only just voluntary, involuntary, regrettable, diversity metrics and attrition trends. And these were all self-created by our team. So when we were going through deals, after the deal, we could actually look at data and say, hey, what was our 5 quarter attrition trend going into the deal? How can we segment out the population that joined us? Do we see any differences? And then when we did the P&I survey, later on, we could actually segment,
Right.
right, some of the populations. We had the competitive edge survey from Focus. We could segment populations by departments that we knew came over in total investment teams to see how they compared relative to the rest of the organization and where we need to pay more attention to. And then the HR business partners, right, could get that information and say, okay, now we know we got to get on top of this for this team. And, it could be, hey, Mike, or hey, other members of your leadership team in HR, how do we get out there and talk more about this?
Yeah.
Because they're still learning a year into it. They're still learning about the organization. They've been through one pay cycle, right? They've been through one promotion cycle. They're doing succession planning and talent development for the first time with us. And so they're still learning, right? It's
Yeah.
like investment performance, right? You get the 1, 3, 5, 7, if you're lucky, 10, right? Rolling through with good performance. That takes time. And that's where I
Yeah.
think that integrated talent approach, how you're hiring, how you're developing, how you're managing talent, how you're refreshing so your board is seeing, your mutual fund board, your public company board is seeing a holistic view on talent, and that you're actually assessing the talent within the firm. I think that's just very helpful as you do deals, because when you're really good at it, and I think every HR executive or talent leader aspires to this, then if both sides are really good at a deal, you could be mapping things, because the data is so great between both firms. You could the creativeness and the ability to use that information and map to put together the best teams possible is great. But most of the times, all firms aren't as data heavy and data focused for such a long time. So
Yeah. And I think that to me is one of the big key takeaways for me in this conversation, Mike, is that you guys use the discipline of data around what people typically categorize as soft skills, soft stuff, right? It's not. The people stuff is the hard stuff because that actually is what delivers the decisions that creates the value for the client, right? And you guys use data to manage trends, watch what was going on. You used some of our tools like Competitive Edge Survey, the Team Scorecard, the Enneagram tools, things that we offered up. We worked together on to provide you and your team with the data that you needed to say, we need to shift here and we need to pivot there. I just want to ask you one more question, Mike.
sure.
If you can give our listeners here, CEOs who are listening to this, one bit of key wisdom when it comes to mergers and acquisitions, what would you tell them?
You know, uh, the piece I would say when we were going through, we did a lot in a very short period of time. Culture, try to get as much information as possible around the culture of the organization that is coming in, whether it be a survey tool, whether it be multiple conversations, go visit, right? Go spend time in their offices, I mean, we did one deal. I was sitting in a hotel room for 3 days waiting for the deal announced in San Diego to meet the team, trying to stay hidden with two executives
Yep.
and the executives from the other team, right? Before we could go meet everybody. And also recognize and appreciate what these individuals are going through. One of the deals we did, the employees were not happy in the moment because the firm we were working that we ultimately came together with was had a regulatory issue, and they couldn't be part of that firm anymore. So we were excited for them to join us and be part of us, but they were going through their own moments, and so we had to recognize and appreciate. We dealt with angry employees. We dealt with angry people. That the anger wasn't directed at our organization. They were just angry in general. So that's where I said empathy, humility. Recognize people are going through change. If doing a deal on paper is easy, right? Easier, easy-ish, right? I guess it all lines up. The products line up. But you're dealing with people, right? The clients know the PMs. The client know the investment teams. The client knows the salesperson and the client service person, right? Those are all people. They can make things go really, really well, or if they're disengaged, or if they're not feeling like things aren't transparent, the communication's not going well, they can become very disengaged and maybe step out and step someplace else, and then you lost that opportunity
Yeah.
in that moment, in that kind of time of change,
Yeah.
And learning, I would say, Keith, you emphasized something like you brought Enneagram, whether it be DISC, Enneagram, Myers Briggs. Like we tried to learn about ourselves more at Voya Investment Management and broader Voya, and that was a tool that was really helpful. And then training our team to be the facilitators because they trusted the business partners to facilitate and learn about themselves. And I think we did 100 sessions and had like almost 60 to 70% of our employees through kind of a diversity of thought. Like, how are our teams thinking? What were the rifts between personality types? Using it during performance management to say, hey, I'm a 3, that person's a 1. How do I have a very constructive dialogue? So not only knowing about myself, but knowing about the team that worked with me. And those tools, I was looking at a document the other day, those tools were helpful because then we use those to talk to the teams that were joining us to let them know that this is part of who we are. We like to learn about ourselves. We know we're all not perfect. When we go in times of stress, I go here. That's just who I am. And I remember showing the new members of our team that joined from one of these places,
Right.
one of these organizations, say, this is who I am, right? And you're part of our team, and really integrating them into our team, doing an Enneagram session with the whole team after the deal was done, getting the new members that came over to feel part of something, not that they were just part of this smaller subset, that they were a fully integrated part of the team, and making sure, when we integrated them, we assigned things to certain members of that group coming over that were enterprise wide,
Yeah.
and making sure they had ownership because we were selling them to join us. We were recruiting them to join us. They joined us. It was great. But now we had to give them roles and responsibilities for their skills that were, not just for the groups that came over.
Yeah. So
So
what I hear you saying is know your people, know your talent, who you have and who you are bringing into the organization. Um, Make sure that you do that one person at a time, using tools like the Enneagram, but also then using it in larger groups, using tools like the competitive edge survey, other ways to statistically understand, is this going to be a good marriage? Make sure that you take a look at it one individual at a time. So the ones that you want to retain, you can retain, and they will perform at a high level because you've discovered their genius and you've released them to work in their genius.
yeah, the one thing I'd say leave too is they also complemented your succession plans. As you do these deals, you're picking up talent, and all of a sudden your succession plans are becoming more robust
Right.
because now you have access to more talent that wasn't part of your organization before. Now it's your opportunity to dig in, get the development plans going, make sure the people are getting developed to step in potentially to that seat, and tell them, hey, we think you could do this someday. These are the things to pay attention to, and this is something where we value in terms of development.
And that's important because succession is what gives you and creates long-term value in an organization. So as you acquire new talent to come in through an acquisition, recognizing they could actually slot in to a key leadership role for you, that creates long-term value. And that's the idea of, if you're going to pay 15, 20, 22 times EBITDA, you want to understand what that long-term value opportunity could be. So, Mike, thank you for joining us today. We really appreciate it. As always, it's a pleasure for you and I to kind of geek out on stuff like this, because it's very enjoyable to us. Hopefully, our listeners will also get some nuggets of gold out of this as well. So, Mike, thanks for joining the podcast. For
Thanks,
the rest
Keith.
of you, keep your eyes and ears open for our next podcast. Thanks, everybody.